Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Bicaveras, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM.
Are you a Christian business owner or an aspiring Christian entrepreneur? Do you want to transform the marketplace in your community? Then it's time for you to discover B2B Groups, small group Bible studies that meet regularly to study what the Word of God says about business and to encourage one another with God's powerful wisdom for our lives and businesses. To learn more about joining or starting a group, visit blessed2bless.net. That's blessed, the numeral 2, bless.net.
From Chesapeake, Virginia, the Lighthouse 100.1 presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic. Now here is Greg Bicaveras.
Sports Scene, midweek online, Saturday on the radio from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on 100.1 FM, 1010 a.m., tunein.com, type in WPMH in the search bar to listen on the radio. Greg Bicaveras along with Joe Daniel, glad you're with us. Hope your summer is going well. Sports Scene is an interview show just like Sports Highlights on nnpstv.com. Tell your friends about gjbtv.com and click the YouTube link on the homepage for archived audio and video. Twitter @GregBic and GJB Radio. And you can see the rest of my Twitter handles on gjbtv.com in the contact section. Thank you to our military. It was a treat to be at Fort Eustis to be part of their MMA action last Friday in Newport News, which was July 27th. Guest lineup presented by Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville. They're delivering now. Sponsors on gjbtv.com, marketplace sponsors, and Hampton Roads onlinemall.com. Phone line presented by Me Casita with 2 locations in Virginia Beach. Show presented by hrsmhof.com. A pleasure being one of the PA announcers of the City Open in D.C. Major League Baseball races are heating up. Great interviews, business segments, highlights, commentary, what tees me off. Thank you for making the habit to listen to Sports Scene weekly, and we love our regulars, newcomers, and tourists. Stay tuned.
The best guests appear here on Sports Scene. Now back to Greg in the Hampton Roads onlinemall.com studios.
All right, welcome back to Sports Scene every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 on 100.1 FM, 1010 AM. TuneIn.com, type in WPMH in the search bar. Greg Bicaveras, glad you're with us. For more archives, go to gjbtv.com, hit the YouTube link. Our good friends at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville, they're now delivering. Go by and see Mike and their wonderful staff. Nice, spacious dining area, lunch and dinner daily, 7 days a week. Excellent food, excellent desserts, great rollout menu. Like them on Facebook. For more, go to Outback.com. Give them a call at 523-4832 at 1255 Fordham Drive in Virginia Beach. Brian and the wonderful staff at Panera, all items 100% clean. At Harborview in Suffolk, they do catering, excellent soups, sandwiches, salads, smoothies, desserts, excellent cookies. For more, go to PaneraBread.com. Food as it should be. Phone number 483-3670, 6255 College Drive in Harborview, open 7 days a week. Andy Hilton, he has been on Sports Scene, Sports Highlights for several years. Well-known high school enthusiast, covers a lot on his website and social media. Andy, welcome.
Greg, thanks so much for having me on Sports Scene.
Before we talk about the high school, what's big in the news right now is the Ohio State football scandal. Here we go, right there, a month before season. You deal with a lot of college coaches. Talk about a distraction at the worst possible time.
Yeah, you have to wonder about the timing of this, but you hit the nail on the head. The kids are reporting for camp. Problematic for Ohio State. Especially
a big-time school like that. All right, Andy, let's talk about high school 2018, but let's recap a little bit about 2017. What stood out from you from the Southside teams last fall?
Well, Oscar Smith continues to be dominant, although Kingsport, you may remember, got him right at the end of the actually ended up splitting the Southeastern District title. It was the Tigers that were in line for their 100th straight win in district, and Kings Fork, in a battle, in a great game, knocked them off in the last game of the regular season. Of course, those two teams don't meet in the playoffs, so Kings Fork went on to the playoffs. Oscar Smith ended up being the only team in our region that made it to the state championship game, and they fell once again to Westfield. That's the third year in a row that they've lost to Westfield in the state title game, so that gives certainly Oscar Smith some motivation coming into the season.
And to give us your full title, websites, and everything that you do.
Fantastic. Well, I run recruit757.com, so I am the guy who started it, who runs it, and I have a great staff working for me of photographers, videographers, and writers. So what we do is provide content, provide coverage of high school sports, most specifically football and basketball. And on the football side, I work directly with college coaches to help the local kids get noticed, get recruited, get offers, and help them navigate the recruiting process.
You mentioned Oscar Smith, a couple of questions about that. They've had several different coaches. One passed away and Bill D., other left. How has that transition been, and how is it to get rivalries when these alignments are changing every year?
Well, that is the intriguing thing about Oscar Smith. 3 straight state championship appearances, 3 different head coaches. Scott Johnson is currently the coach there. Bill D. was the coach prior to Scott, and Richard Morgan was the coach until he moved to Marietta a couple of years ago, and that's a whole nother story. There's been a scandal down there with transfers and so forth. That's Georgia football. But as much as there have been accusations of Morgan recruiting here, nothing ever came to the surface. In Marietta, it did, and that may be too much of a tangent for you.
Very good. Talking to Andy Hilton from Recruit 757, Greg Bickaveris at Greg Bick on Twitter. But the VHSL is always changing. They're changing again next year.
Yes, they are. And in fact, we talk about realignment. That kicks in next year. So this fall, everything is the same as it has been the last 3 years. They're running on 4-year cycles now for classification. And what the VHSL is doing is looking at enrollment figures, doing enrollment projections, and classifying teams or classifying high school sports programs as a whole by class 1 through 6. The biggest schools are in 6. The smallest schools are in 1. Most of the schools in this area are 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s. Most of your Southside schools are 5s and 6s. Most of your Peninsula schools, actually, they're kind of all over the place, but you will not have a Class 6 school moving forward after this coming year because Woodside drops from 6 to 5. And that's the intriguing thing, is that we're seeing some things shift, although this does not affect regular season scheduling. Peninsula District will continue playing mostly Peninsula District schools with a few out-of-district games. Bay Rivers is the same, Southeastern, Eastern, Beach, all of it's the same in terms of regular season. The big change is in the postseason, where teams will come up against each other and play in the playoffs for state championships.
The VHSL is based in Charlottesville, and I've talked to several coaches, even attorneys. They seem to favor the small rural cities in Northern Virginia or Roanoke or Charlottesville that are not relevant to Hampton Roads, Richmond, and that area, so forth. It just seems like that's their MO these last several years, to make busing and make it easier, yet Peninsula and Southside's not exactly close by either.
No, and that's one of the things that it has been a concern. There's an argument that the big schools in our area, in Richmond and Northern Virginia, should have a bigger voice. They're representing a bigger student population. But it seems as though VHSL listens to the small schools equally with the big schools. And the complaints that I've heard from local athletic directors is that the small schools in the western part of the state are used to busing and traveling for just about any game. And you look at Virginia Beach, for example, the schools there, it's an 11-school district for football, 10 games, they play each other. They don't have to even leave the city to play football games. In the higher population areas, there's simply no need for long travel, and the changes that the VHSL has instituted generally create more travel for teams and more expense. And that's why you're hearing local schools and local athletic directors screaming about the changes.
Talking to Andy Hilton, always a pleasure. Greg Bickaveris, glad you're with us. Sports Scene every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 at Greg Bick on Twitter. We'll talk more about social media with Andy a little bit later. And you talk about scheduling and so forth. The Peninsula schools are different because the Newport News and Hampton schools play at one venue, Todd Stadium or Darling Stadium. So trying to get a host playoff game is not as easy. You see at Woodside, who had to play Lansdowne last year, where they hosted them 2 years ago. It's a fine line. It makes every week almost a playoff type game if you want to host in the postseason.
Yes, absolutely. And postseason games, getting that high seed is obviously desirable. But one of the things you also mentioned is that when you're playing with one home stadium, and we've seen this in recent years, for instance, where Hampton and Phoebus both get top seeds. They're in two separate divisions. One has to play on Saturday. One might have to play on Friday night. Who gets the Friday night game? Mike Smith, of course, has a lot of pull, but that even creates an issue within your home stadium as to who really has home field advantage when these games come up, because we're working with a shared facility.
I have the utmost respect for Mike Smith. You brought him up, head coach since '71. We've televised a lot of his games over the years. Is he an example now, though, Andy? All those that have power are afraid to lose it?
Oh, absolutely. Mike, I don't think – it's funny. Everybody questions on when Mike is going to retire. Who knows if Mike's ever going to retire? I think in fact, I talked to him at a recent event, and he has stepped down from one role in the school, so he is doing less with the school, but he absolutely is still very involved and very much the coach of the Hampton Crabbers football team, and there's no reason to expect him to go. He's essentially the mayor of Hampton when it comes to football over there, and what he says goes.
Absolutely, but it'll be intriguing to find out who the next coach of Hampton will be, and it's almost like Paterno. Paterno was at Penn State from 50 to 2011, 50 to 65 as an assistant, 66 to 11 before he passed away later the following several months later. And then Mike Smith has been at Hampton since the 60s as an assistant, 71 as a head coach. You just don't see that often.
No, not at all, especially not in one place. Heck, it's hard for a high school coach to have that long of a career, even if he's bouncing around from school to school, much less stay in one place.
Right. All right. Well, you talk about state powers. Who are some of the state powers?
Well, state powers, we're looking at Highland Springs in Class 5. They're three-time state champions. Westfield in Class 6, three-time state champions. In Class 4, it's a little more up in the air, but Salem out of Roanoke has been consistently placing in the state championship game. They won last year. Louisa County, which is just west of Richmond, had a great year last year, sees their head coach retire, and has some personnel changes. So Louisa was a bit of a surprise last year. Don't know that they're going to return to a state championship game this year, but those are the teams that, for Class 4, for instance, at schools like Dinwiddie and Lafayette, Kings Fork, Heritage, are going to have to go through to win a state championship.
How will Grassfield and Chesapeake do this year, you think?
Well, Grassfield struggled last year. I believe they were 3-7, and they had a murderer's row of a start last year where they went, I believe, 0-4. Mm-hmm. They have the same issue again this year where they open with Deep Creek. They play Oscar Smith early on. They play Colonial Forge early on, which Colonial Forge is a power in 6A from Stafford County. Grassfield's going to have the same problem this year that they had last year, and that is their schedule is just really tough. They were young last year. They're still a little young this year. It could be a trying year, a trying season for Grassfield.
And how about Tommy Riemann at Lansdowne?
Tommy Riemann at Lansdowne. Well, this is the interesting thing. It had been since Percy Harvin's days at Lansdowne that they had won a playoff game, much less won a state championship. Last year was the year where they finally broke the streak and won not only their first playoff game, but they won every regular season game. They ran the table at the Beach last year. They lose some good talent, but Lansdowne is peaking right now. However, the Beach is going to be more competitive than ever because you have some talent that left Bishop Sullivan, and that talent didn't all go to one school. So you had some transfers that have gone to a variety of schools. The rising tide lifts all boats. The rising tide is talent in the Beach District. You're going to see some teams improve this year.
All right, we'll take a short break. We'll come back with more of high school football talk with Andy Hilton. This is Sports Scene every Saturday morning at 10. Stay tuned.
Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicaveras.
Welcome back to Sports Scene. Greg Bicaveras talking with Andy Hilton. Andy, a couple things I don't like. One is rewarding playoff winners with losing records. I mean, really bad losing records. That's a bad MO. It's a bad habit, and it's a bad advice for a high school kid to reward mediocrity or below mediocrity. And even in the business world, if we go 1-9 or 2-8, we can still get rewarded. That's just not right.
Well, there's a big question with that, because the movement to expand the playoffs essentially made double the teams qualify when people were complaining that 8-2 and 7-3 teams were getting left out. Really, the only answer, Greg, to that situation is to make it flexible, because you could halfway expand the playoffs. In other words, cut a number of teams by a quarter, where the top couple of teams in each region get byes. But still, there's no way to really resolve who gets in with what record unless you made the bracket at the end of the season and said, you have to have 5 wins to make the playoffs. And if we have 8 teams that have 5 wins, great. We have a straight bracket. If we have 5 teams that have 5 wins or more, then it's a little more complicated. That's one way to do it, but I don't think the athletic directors are going to take that on, because that means creating the structure of the playoffs 1 week before it starts.
Well, explain that to us. How many teams get rewarded in the postseason? Because it's broadened out throughout the entire state. You might play a team that's not even in your area.
Sure. Well, it's standardized that each team is placed in a region. So there are 4 regions at each level, and those regions really aren't even balanced, because I'll take the new classification, for example. We have 18 teams in Region 5A, whereas we only have 8 teams in Region 6B, because Region 6B currently has teams from Richmond and Stafford County, Fredericksburg in it. So when you look at 8 teams qualifying, you may have all 8 teams make the playoffs. I think the concession they've made there is 7 out of 8 make the playoffs, which is still ridiculous. You're counting on all of those teams, or at least 7 of those 8 teams, having a good enough season to qualify for the playoffs. Yet when you have an 18-team division, you're only picking 8 out of 18. Of course, your numbers are more likely to have better teams in that kind of conference. There's no real way to slice it evenly when you take into account geographics and when you take into account the attendance level at each school. So there are always going to be issues. There's always going to be stronger brackets and weaker brackets, and especially when you get down to the 2A and 1A level, when those schools are playing up, you're going to have a lot of bad teams. And we saw one, I remember one for a couple of years ago. There was a team on the Eastern Shore with a 1-9 record that, by making the playoffs as an 8 seed, got to go to Stanton to play a team that was 10-0. And of course, they drove from the Eastern Shore through Virginia Beach up to Stanton, about an 8-hour drive to take a loss and drive all the way back home, which is honestly ridiculous. That's a perfect example of the kind of problem you're talking about.
Talking to Andy Hilton, Greg Bickaveras, glad you're with us. Andy, you talk about one school at Newport News that did not win a game last year. That was Denby High School. They went 0-10. The intriguing thing about that is they're coached by a city councilman, Marcellus B2 Harris, who has made the postseason. But when he's made the postseason, it hasn't always been a great record either. That just shows you, is it just a warm body now, and that's all you need for high school? Because 0-10 is nothing to brag about.
No, 0-10 is certainly nothing to brag about. And Denby has some issues in terms of attendance zones. And, Greg, you're even more familiar with Newport News than I am, but sure. I've had some people come to me and say, realistically, Menchville and Denby High School could be combined because they're essentially in the same neighborhood, the same group of kids, and because school attendance is lower, I don't mean attendance, but I mean enrollment, the overall population of kids is lower than it used to be. Is it time to close a Newport News High School? Is it time to combine those schools? Because realistically, those schools, Menchville and Denby, are two in the worst in the Peninsula District, unfortunately. Can they combine those schools and make them actually one good student body? Good question.
You're not kidding, talking to Andy Hilton. Andy, this is another big issue, not just in high school, but college and professional sports, too, is attendance. And it's hard to sustain attendance. The kids don't seem as interested. You're around kids all the time. You're around adults all the time. It seems like people are more addicted to their phone. They get a lot of entertainment from their phone. They sit in bed, watch their phone, don't even speak to their own family members. How was that affecting high school sports attendance?
Oh, I believe high school sports attendance is down. We are, like you said, we're more distracted than ever. I've noticed it just over the last, I would say 10 years, but even less than 10 years. A Hampton-Phoebus game 7 years ago, when both teams were undefeated, would be a sellout, and you wouldn't be able to park within a mile of Darling Stadium. Now, the same two undefeated Hampton and Phoebus programs draw maybe a half-full stadium on a Saturday afternoon. There are way too many things going on. We can't change that, but there's too many entertainment options, and people have other things to do. They don't support high school football the way that they used to. Traditions aren't what they used to be. It's a head-scratcher, Greg. I wish you had the answer or I had the answer on how to change that, but I certainly think that a show like this does a great thing in highlighting high school football, and let's get parents and families and even friends and community members supporting high school football, because it is one of the great traditions that we have.
Yeah, it's easier to sit around for a fan just to look at your website or watch one of our TV games and not make any effort. It doesn't cost them any money. I get that. People are trying to save money. Concessions are expensive. Movie theaters are very expensive. Going out to dinner is very expensive. Everything is expensive, so it all comes with a price.
Absolutely, and with the Man Cave or the Family Media Center, it's certainly very easy to sit at home and watch, whether it's sports, whether it's movies or anything else, watch theater-quality entertainment at home. It's much easier to come by than it ever has been.
One advantage that the South Side's always going to have, one of the 5 Newport News schools, 4 Hampton schools, not Gloucester because they have their own stadium, is they play Friday nights for the most part at their own arena. In Newport News, you only have one game, which means a lot of times there's a lot of Saturday-heavy schedules, and high school football cannot compete against college football on Saturday, and the attendance is even more thin. You've seen it firsthand, especially in September and October.
Oh, absolutely. But you would think that the Friday night game would benefit from there being the only game in town. Hampton has one high school game on Friday night. The City of Newport News has one high school game on Friday night. Yet we don't see attendance gain on Friday night to the detriment of Saturday. So that in and of itself is probably not the answer. We just need to get people out and participating in watching high school football.
Yeah, just participating in life in general. I mean, it's not about just sitting on your couch watching it on your phone. And even when they go to the games, Andy, they're still on their phone.
You're right.
Very good. Talking to Andy Hilton right here from Recruit 757. As far as summer practices, we're into August right now. They have to be more careful with water breaks and so forth. How's that working out?
That's working out, and we've been a little fortunate. The weather's been a little cooler, a little rainier. We've seen some teams have to practice indoors, but fortunately the story this year has not been hydrate, hydrate, hydrate like it is usually at this time of the year when we're having 95-degree sunny days every day in the summertime, in August particularly. So it hasn't been quite the story, but you've got some concerns about hydration. You've got some concerns about concussions. Those things continue to be an annual story when it comes to high school football. Yeah,
recruiting is always tough. That's a full-time job for you, is that recruiting?
Oh, absolutely. It sure is, and I love doing what I do, and that's the fun thing is it's year-round between offers and signing day and training camps or prospect camps, 7-on-7, August, 2-a-days, and the football season. I'm busy 12 months a year with football, and I love every minute of it.
Andy, we'll leave it on the lighter side. We don't need to mention any names. You and I have both been in radio and TV for decades. Another advantage of owning our own business is we don't have to worry about sales meetings on Monday morning and that whiteboard as well, those awkward Monday or Friday meetings.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny, I've been through my years as a advertising salesperson as well as an advertising sales manager, sat on both sides of that table, and although I do, and I'm sure you do, a little advertising work still, you're right. It is nice to be in business for yourself and run your own schedule. There's times where it can be thankless, but I wouldn't do anything else.
All right, leave us with a nugget or a surprise that we might look out for this year, anywhere in high school football.
My nugget for a surprise in high school football is look out for Princess Anne High School in Virginia Beach. They've been a doormat of the beach for at least a decade. Last year they came along and made the playoffs, I believe, for the first time in a while. They were closing in on 500. They were 4-6 or 5-5. This is the year where they're going to be better than 5-5. They still have to prove themselves, but they have young talent there that's not only going to be good this year, but even better next year. They're a team on the rise.
And Gloucester did well last year, too.
Yes, they did. And the funny thing is, they're not doing it with big-name talent. They did have a quarterback last year who committed to Old Dominion. He may not play quarterback. He may play safety at Old Dominion. But Gloucester is not yet loaded with big-name talent, yet the coaching there has been fantastic. John Scalf has been good for that program. He came up as an assistant coach and is now the head coach there. Last year was his first year. The Dukes are a team to watch out for in the Peninsula.
Andy, all the best for the rest of the summer, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Fantastic. Thank you, Greg, for having me on Sports Scene. Look forward to talking to you soon.
My pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much. Andy Hilton right there from Recruit 757. Greg Bicaveras, glad you're with us. I want to thank our good friends, CP Shuckers, Locals Tradition, Shore Drive, Pacific Avenue. People love their delicious food, great appetizers, steak bites, sandwiches, burgers, all the games on TV, Major League Baseball, golf, tennis, preseason football. Go by and see Matt and Mark at CP Shuckers today. Like them on Facebook.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Email bicogb@hotmail.com. Now back to Greg Bicaveras in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios.
Welcome back to Sports Scene. I want to thank our good friends at Barrel 17 down at the oceanfront, 1706 Mediterranean Avenue, Virginia Beach. Go by and see Jamie and Chris and the great staff. Get some great appetizers, great burgers, hot dogs as well, chicken sandwiches, salads, vegan burgers, house-cut fries, beer battered onion rings. Take your friends with you to Barrel 17. Watch the games on TV. Enjoy a great meal. Like them on Facebook as well. 1706 Mediterranean Avenue in Virginia Beach. Speaking of the South Side, let's go to our weekly segment with the Norfolk Tides. Ian Locke, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Very good. We're down to the stretch season now. We're in August.
We got 32 or about approximately 30 games left in the season, and yeah, it's coming down to the wire here. The Tides are playing really well. We've won a whole bunch of games lately, and going down the stretch, we're right in the thick of the playoff hunt. So that's a good thing to have.
Since we last spoke a week ago, a lot's changed with the trade deadline. The Orioles got rid of a lot of key players.
Yeah, the Orioles are a little different than the time we last spoke. Like you mentioned, there was a whole bunch of trades with the trade deadline passing on the 31st, and the Orioles traded Manny Machado, Zach Britton, Brad Brock, Kevin Gausman, and Jonathan Scope. So those are some key members of the organization, or they were, and the Orioles acquired 15 different players that, from those core guys, and they've basically reshaped the system. They have a whole bunch of younger guys, and they're going to go forward and play some of the younger players going forward, and hopefully some of the prospects that they acquired can turn into some superstars. And that's the tough part about rebuilding. You don't know about prospects, so maybe you can strike it rich with some of these guys, and the Orioles can be back playing really good baseball real soon.
It's obviously the management and the ownership and the players are all looking forward to next season already and kind of just trying to retool themselves for August and September, but they're playing decent baseball here lately.
Yeah, they also play. I mean, they've played well lately. They had such a horrid start early, and they've played a little better lately. But this last month, 2 months of the season for them is going to be interesting to see because they've basically stated, hey, we're now going to rebuild mode. So now that the dust has settled a little bit with the trades, trading some of those guys away, don't be surprised to see a whole bunch of younger guys kind of coming up and getting some auditions. And there's a couple of players. I was talking to pitchers named Josh Rogers and Cody Carroll, two of the pitchers that were acquired in the Zach Britton trade, and they were with the Yankees, and they got traded over here, and they joined the Tides. And I was talking to them last week, and they were kind of like, hey, it was great being with the Yankees organization. Don't get me wrong, but you're blocked there a lot of times. You are stuck, in AAA, and if you go up for one day and you don't perform, they will send you right back down because every game, in New York is a thing where they're trying to win every single day, and not that the Orioles aren't, but there's a little more leeway for those guys. And they were, some people think, hey, got traded from the Yankees to the Orioles, that might not be a good thing, but these guys now will get a chance down the stretch here to play and pitch in Baltimore and perform and get some major league time under their belt. And Cody Carroll actually just got called up by the Orioles, made his major league debut at Yankee Stadium to pitch against the Yankees and pitched a solid inning of relief. And those guys, that's valuable time where they can learn in the big leagues, and that's something that with the Orioles they're going to have that opportunity for some younger players to do. And with the organizations that are currently in the playoff hunt, like the Yankees and Red Sox and Dodgers and some other teams, the younger players don't really get that chance down the stretch.
Very good talking to Ian Locke. And one thing, Ian, I know you're a baseball purist. You love baseball. I love baseball, too. And I'm always the type that works a lot of sports but likes sports in seasons. And I love baseball. There's nothing like the pennant and the wild card. The wild card's really added a lot of value to both the American League and National League. It seems like the Yankees are way ahead for the wild card. I mean, way ahead of everybody else. And you see, like, the intriguing thing in the National League where the Nationals are trying to chase the Braves and the Phillies. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it really is. It includes so many more teams in the playoff chase. Like you mentioned, the Yankees are pretty big up, in that first wild card spot. But now with the two wild cards, I think the Mariners and the Athletics are tied as we speak now, going into the stretch run here. So all that baseball that they're playing is very important. And then in the National League, like you mentioned, the Brewers, the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Rockies, even the Pirates and the Cardinals are all right there. I think as we speak now, the second wild card, there's 6 teams within 5 games of that. So there's really only a handful of teams that are out of it at this point, and it makes for exciting baseball. I mean, it's to play 162 games and then come down the stretch and have 1 or 2 games that last weekend of the year is always exciting, and then you go into the playoffs, and once you get in, it's one of those things where if you make it into the playoffs, anything can happen. It's a short series, and you you get a hot pitcher on your side, and who knows, you can make a run all the way to the World Series.
Very good, very good. You look at the National League; they got a lot of teams. The American League, they don't have many.
Yeah, the American League is kind of more of a have and have not right now. I mean, you got the like I said, the Yankees and Red Sox are far and away the better teams in the American League East. The Indians have a really big lead in the Central, and the Astros have about a 5 or 6 game lead in the Mariners and the Athletics, and so it's really the playoff chase in the American League is really going to be do the Yankees catch the Red Sox in the American League East, and then who gets that second wild card? Because you got to assume the Red Sox or Yankees are going to get that. One's going to win the division, one's going to win the wild card, and then comes down to the Mariners and the Athletics kind of fighting out for that second wild card. But yeah, in the National League, there are, like I said, so many teams fighting down the stretch for that, and it's going to be real tight. I mean, that's part of the reason some of these teams made these big trades with the Orioles. I mean, the Dodgers and the Braves are separated by a half game right now, and the Brewers are right there. They're leading the wild card, and that's why they made some trades for some of the better guys that the Orioles had, hopefully to make a difference down the stretch and put those guys into the playoffs.
Well, a few more homestands left. You got some good promotions coming up. I know you got a Bark in the Park coming up, and you got a Turn Back the Clock night as well. Yeah,
it's hard to believe we only have two more homestands left on the regular season. So, hopefully the team will make the playoffs, and we'll have some more home games in September. But for now, we only have 2 homestands left, so there's still the time to come out to Harbor Park is running out a little bit. But we are home from August 7th, which is Tuesday, through August 12th. So Tuesday through Sunday, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming in. We have playoff chances wise, we're playing Scranton Wilkes-Barre, who is the Yankees affiliate. That's the one time the Yankees affiliate comes into town, and then we're playing the Columbus Clippers, who is the Cleveland Indians affiliate. And in the International League, the Tides are currently in the wild card, and the 2 teams right behind them are Scranton Wilkes-Barre and Columbus. So these are huge games on field for us, and then. Those are important games in the playoff chase, and then, like you mentioned, promotions wise this week, we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Highlighted by this weekend, Friday, August 10th, we're going to have Tides baseball caps giveaway. And then Saturday we do a Navy night where we honor all the brave men and women that serve in the Navy with a post-game fireworks extravaganza coming on after the game. And then Sunday is our Bark in the Park, our second one. Where fans can bring their dogs to the Bark and enjoy a trip around the bases after the game with your favorite 4-legged friend.
I know you're always trying to do different improvements to the stadium. The field is always a work in progress. You got a great grounds crew, but how about the seats and the infrastructure as well?
Yeah, that's one of those things we're always trying to build, and those aren't necessarily the sexy upgrades that people look at. You look at like a video board or big signage or things like that are, that fans really notice. But, we're owned by the city of Norfolk, so we work together with the city and try and come up with things every year that need to be replaced. And, from sometimes it's just fixing seats, like you mentioned, or certain cracks in the concourse because the stadium is now 26 years old. But we do everything we can to fix those things every year. There's our stadium operations department, headed by Mike Zeman, does a great job, kind of fixing things as the season goes on. Little things like air conditioning in the suites or things like that do break down sometimes, and they work in constantly to fix things and then build stuff as well. We've added a whole bunch of different stands on the concourse. If you've been here recently, there's a Boathouse barbecue stand that was kind of built from scratch. They've renovated the Why Not Italian pizza stand at the ballpark as well. So, renovations around the park are not just an off-season thing; they're year-round. And if there's ever anything that any fans have that is a suggestion, they can go to the information booth behind home plate and kind of let someone know, hey, this isn't working right, or this is broken, and we'll do everything we can to fix it.
Are you the only team by the water?
I don't know by the water. I guess there's we're definitely right on the river, and that's I think in our league, I think we are the only team that's right by the water. There's a lot of teams that are right downtown, but yeah, I think Indianapolis is pretty close to some water, but I think we're the only one that's right on the water.
All right, leave us with all the social media.
Yeah, so if any fans want to find out more information on promotions or tickets, they can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Norfolk Tides. They can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at Norfolk Tides, and they can look us up on YouTube, Norfolk Tides Clips. We post highlights of all of our home games. And then for the complete schedule, for everything, you can go to norfolktides.com. We've renovated our website this year as well, so you can go on and on your phone as well now, and everything looks a lot better and a lot cleaner and crisper on your phone. So lots of different places to find out what's going on. And like I said, we only have 2 homestands left, so don't miss out on coming down to Harbor Park and enjoying a ball game.
Yeah, it seems like the back in the day when Dave was around, the interaction was more about the radio, the trivia. Now that Facebook has changed everything, where you're constantly getting interaction, constantly getting feedback from the fans.
Yeah, it's changed the game, that's for sure. I mean, fans will Facebook message us that I'll in charge of most of the social media, and I'll wake up and later than I probably should, but I sleep in or something, and I wake up and there's 3 people that messaged us, one at 4 a.m. and one at 6 a.m. and one at midnight, and you go, I didn't respond to them because I was asleep. So it's one of those where you try and respond to as many fan questions as you can, and even through Twitter and Instagram, there's people always checking in and, hey, when do tickets go on sale? How much is this? When do the gates open? Just some simple questions, and you got to be available to answer those as much as we can. So we have a staff that tries to answer all the questions, stay vigilant on the social media. But there are some things that sometimes we do have to sleep every once in a while where we can't respond right away. But we do our best to get back in touch with everyone whenever they ask a question.
Fans, give Ian Locke a break. He is definitely the PR king of the Tides. Yes, Ian, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Greg. Take care.
Stay tuned to more of Sports Scene after these messages.
Are you searching for a genuine connection with God and others? Then join Virginia Beach United Methodist this week for worship, life groups, holy yoga, or one of the many other activities we offer every week in a warm and friendly environment. We are located at 212 19th Street in Virginia Beach with modern services at 9:30 a.m. and traditional services at 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. For more information, please visit our website at vbumc.org or call 757-428-7727.
You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicoveris. Now, back to Greg. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
Time now for highlights. Sports Scene is online on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Go to gjbtv.com. Hit the YouTube link for archive shows. Sports Scene online on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the Lighthouse. TuneIn.com. Type in WPMH in the search bar as well. Be a favorite on TuneIn as well. HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit, bookmark it. gjbtv.com and hrsmhof.com. Our question presented by Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News to Joe Daniel, the producer, who also hosts his own radio show as well. Joe Daniel, during the summer, do you like a lot of activities away from home, like the beach, the pool, being with the kids, a barbecue, or do you prefer to stay at home doing your own activities?
That's tough because I hate hot weather and I hate humidity, and so I don't like being outdoors. I don't like being around the bugs, and the grass is itchy. I just don't like the outdoors much. But it's weird because I enjoy camping and I want to do those activities. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to the pool. I want to go hiking with the kids, and like I said, camping. I want to do those things. It's just the heat. There's a time, I think, in spring and maybe early fall that's a good weather that I'm comfortable in, and I would love to be more outdoors and doing outdoor activities. It's just during the summer season I want to do those things because it's summer, you almost feel like you have to, but at the same time, because it's just the weather and like the past few weeks, it seems, with the weather that we've been having with the constant rain, it's hard to do anything even though you kind of want to. Even just barbecuing, you're standing outside in the heat and you're next to a hot grill that heats you up even more. And like, I want to grill outside burgers and hot dogs for the kids and ribs. I want to do all those things, but it's just so much of a hassle to stand out in the heat and you're drenched and you're dripping. It's so uncomfortable and pleasant for me. So I have mixed feelings about it.
It's like my niece who's 5 years old, and like your kids who are very young, similar to that age as well, is they've got mobile devices that keep them very busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's helpful because at the same time that I don't want to go outside, I want to tell my kids, you know what? It's just too hot. It's 90, 95 degrees outside, high humidity. I don't want you playing outside. So yes, you can stay inside in the air conditioning to be comfortable. But when it's, 85 degrees, then an 80-degree weather, I'm absolutely, hey, shut everything off. Go outside. Take your toys outside. Play in the dirt. Exactly what I used to do when I was a kid. There's a line there that you have to make sure you don't cross as far as sending your kids out there when it's too hot, because that could lead to heat stroke if you force your kids outside. And they stay out there for too long. That's not healthy. But also keeping them inside for long periods of times on their electronics, that's also unhealthy.
Of course, and sports scene right there in Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News. Go by and see Paul and the wonderful staff. Get some great lunch and dinner, great appetizers, great wings, burgers, wraps, sandwiches, desserts, kids menu, all the games on TV. Watch preseason football, baseball, golf, tennis as well. Right there, Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News. Their phone number is 249-3999, area code 757, of course. 12150 Jefferson Avenue for those of you GPSing it, right near Patrick Henry Mall. Wings, beer, sports, open for lunch, dinner, late night. Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News.
Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicaveras.
Welcome back to Sports Scene right here on 1010 AM, 100.1 FM, The Lighthouse. I want to thank our good friends at Sakura Japanese Restaurant. Go by and see Jasmine and the great staff. Get some great Japanese food at the Walmart Way Crossing, 410-4577. Our monthly segment with George McLean, the owner of the Marksman in Newport News. George, welcome.
Thank you, Greg. How are you today?
Very good, very good. I was on the Fort Eustis base recently working a mixed martial arts fight, and of course, always secure on base and clearance on base. But I'm bringing that up because you're not too far from Fort Eustis, and you have Military Mondays and First Responder Fridays, and that's very popular.
It gives the military guys a little bit more incentive. Try to save them a buck. Our way of saying thanks, at the same time for their service, so they get a pretty good break.
You have a good break of military, police officers, and civilians walking into your store every day.
We get the mix. We certainly do, and this time of the year, we get a lot of foreign visitors from other countries where it is illegal for them to have firearms. And so a lot will come in and take a bit of a lesson to where they're to a level of being safe, and then being supervised on the range where they get an opportunity to shoot. They never had that opportunity before, so it's a good experience for them as well.
Talking to George from the Marksman. And George, one thing, walking into your store, everybody's got a different agenda. Some are doing the range, some are doing lessons, some are learning about gun safety, some are looking to buy something. So every time a customer walks in, it's totally different from maybe the other customer.
Every customer has their own needs, and so we, all the salespeople. I say salespeople. Their job is primarily customer service and to be there. So they're not. I don't want to say salespeople like a car salesman that as soon as you walk in the door you're getting hammered to buy something. That's not our purpose. But it's to find out what your needs are, and a lot of people obviously just come in to shoot, and we separate the lines. So when you come into the lobby, to the customer's right would be the range area. So you're only if there is a line, and sometimes there are, and sometimes there isn't. That would be the area where you wait if you're looking to purchase a holster or a firearm or anything else on the retail side. That's the register that's on the left. So you don't have to stand in line with those waiting to go on the range. Just if you're wanting to come in and make a quick purchase of something. So we try to separate that, and again, it just makes it easier for the differences in the types of customer needs that we see when they come in.
We're talking to George from the Marksman right there on Industrial Park Drive, very convenient to Newport News, Yorktown, Williamsburg, the entire peninsula, and of course people from all over the state go there, the Marksman in Newport News as well. For somebody wanting to come in for the first time and wants a lesson that does not own a gun, do you all provide guns and bullets during the lessons?
We do. Our pricing at that typically is $50 an hour for one-on-one instruction with the instructor. Now that includes the firearm, the range, the instructor's time, targets, eye protection, ear protection, everything except ammo. And the reason that we can't price in the ammo is because we don't know where the student's going to go as far as the type of firearm that they want to learn on. You may have someone, very small person that's, a larger handgun, they may not be able to handle, or they may scare them to death. You want to put them in a 22. Well, that 22, the price for 22 ammo, that's the cheapest ammo that we typically have in the store. And you may have a student then that wants to shoot a 45. Well, that 45 ammo costs, 10 to 15 times more for the same number of rounds than what a box of 22 does. So, and of course, 9mm, 380, or even 38 is all somewhere, in the middle. So it's impossible for us to put all of that in there. So what we, tell the customers when they come in, or if they call to schedule, and all instruction is done by appointment only, so we can keep the instructors' schedules straight and make sure that someone is available at the appropriate time. But we'll quote them the $50 an hour and tell them the only thing that's not included in that is the cost of your ammo, and that's dependent upon the type of firearm. The firearm itself, use of that is all included. It's just simply the cost of the ammo is not included in that. So that's the only add-on after the fact.
Let me ask you this for the novice person out there going to the grocery store or to a big box store, and they see a person who has a right to carry and who has a right for a permit and who has a right visible that they're showing their gun. Is that more or less like letting the public know that they are armed if something happens? What's the main factor going behind the scenes for that? Because it's very visible to the public that Joe Public or Susie Public has a gun with them.
Well, Virginia's got two categories that's legal. One is the open carry, which kind of I think is maybe what you're describing. If you happen to walk into the grocery store and you see a non-uniformed individual, so this is obviously not a security guard, not a police officer, just your private citizen, and they have a firearm on their hip. If where you are, if the store you're in does not prohibit firearms, then that individual is legal, and there's no permit or license required to openly carry. We say open carry because it's in a holster on the hip. The gun is in full view of anyone. That's legal. And everyone, I won't say everyone, but several people, ask me, well, if open carry is legal, then why is there a need for a concealed permit and to carry concealed? And because what's going to happen in today's environment, you walk around where open carry is legal, okay, you're probably going to generate several 911 calls from uninformed individuals or folks that are hard left in their political views, and they're against anyone having a firearm. They're going to call and maybe embellish the story a little bit. There's a man in name a store, that's walking around with a gun. Well, I can guarantee you that's going to generate a multi-officer vehicle response from and possibly several police departments, and they all run in there ready for a gunfight, and they may have their firearms drawn to confront an individual who is not breaking the law at all, but because somebody who did not know made an errant phone call. So to avoid that type of situation, we advocate people getting the proper training and getting their concealed permits. And you carry concealed. Again, even with a concealed permit, if the store owner or the building owner has signs up or says no firearms, or however they want to word that, no firearms or firearms prohibited, kind of a deal. They're the ones that make that determination. But absent any of that, and you walk in, nobody knows that you have a firearm on you, so you don't cause any ruckus. You don't generate any phone calls. You go in, you do your shopping, and you walk out. You've had your firearm on you. If you needed to use it, it was there. Just like the individual carrying it on his hip out in the open, if he needed to use it, it was there, which is probably the reason he was carrying it to start with. But now nobody else knew about it. There was no commotion generated. And again, in today's environment, that's probably the better way to go.
Absolutely, talking to George McClain, because whether you're in public or private, you turn the news on, you read the newspaper, there's more and more shootings every day. There's shootings in domestic violence, which is horrible. A young lady who worked for a local cleaners got killed several weeks ago in Hampton in broad daylight by a deranged former partner. Then you look in Denby, there was a shooting at night in broad public of several businesses, or you go to another state and a shooting like in New Orleans or something. You really have to be vigilant where you're at. And I guess it really comes down to, George, watch the company you keep.
Well, that's very true. Watch the company you keep and be aware of your surroundings and the company that others keep, that you may not have any social interaction with these folks at all. The old kind of standard fare that I preach a lot, and that self-defense, a full 90% of self-defense is staying out of situations that might cause you, emphasize the word might. That might means that there's a possibility that might cause you to have to use self-defense to start with. So, if a full 90% of self-defense is just avoiding those potentially problematic situations, man, chances are of needing to use self-defense just reduce dramatically. So there's a common sense factor, and we're all aware that is a rapidly diminishing attribute for folks these days. Common sense goes right out the window.
Very good. George, give us your hours and how the public can get there as well. And pretty much they can GPS right there to Industrial Park Drive.
Yeah, GPS is great. You can go on the internet, you see our website, but we're at 520 Industrial Park Drive. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then Sundays we're open from noon until 6.
Very good.
Now, we've got other hours that we will schedule for private lessons and for security classes and for concealed classes and all of that. But for the general public, as far as coming into shooting or buying or something, we open up at 10 o'clock and open until 8 o'clock every night except Sunday, and that's opening at noon on Sunday and closing at 6.
Very good. George, all the best. Have a good rest of August, and we'll talk to you in September.
All right, Greg. Looking forward to it. You take care.
Thank you. George McClain right there from the Marksman in Newport News. Joe Daniel, you always learn something from that man, I tell you. In today's climate, you have to be like my grandmother said, 2 eyes in front, 2 eyes in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. And like he said, with the open carry and concealed carry, I was going to Subway with my kids just earlier in the week, and there was a man who came out of his truck. He went to go lift up his shirt and adjust his shirt, and I saw what I thought was a concealed gun in his back pocket of his pants. And even though I'm all pro gun, it still is a little unnerving to know that somebody is there, and there's this instinctual wanting to trust them. You hope that they are a good person and that they are legitimate, but I was tempted to be like, should I call? Should I approach? Like what? And to ask, hey, are you allowed to carry a concealed? You know, I believe I saw it. I have my kids here. Or do I call the police to get them involved and asking? There's so much question and concern regarding something like this, even though it is completely legal.
You're exactly right. It makes people nervous. But one thing I hope, anybody that has a right to carry a gun, please be cognizant there's kids in public. That can freak them out. Regardless, a kid does not know. A kid sees a gun, they're scared.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's up to, especially the parents to, educate, but when's the age appropriateness of that? But like you said, be cognizant of what your surroundings are.
Very good.
What tees you off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
I want to thank our good friends Mark at the Courtyard in Hampton. Go by and see them at 1917 Coliseum Drive. Wonderful pool, excellent bistro, convenient to the interstate, great restaurants close by, and of course Courtyard by Hampton's got great rooms as well. Give them a call at 757-838-3300. What tees me off, Joe Daniel? Parking lots or neighborhoods with limited entrances and exits.
You feel kind of dumb for getting lost in a parking lot. I don't know. I've done it before. Where is the exit? Where do I get out of here? And you feel dumb.
Yes.
But it should be easier.
Nothing worse than people speeding through neighborhoods with kids in there.
Horrible. One of the things that absolutely drives me nuts is people who speed outside. And my kids, I live in a quiet neighborhood, and it should be that way, but my kids are out on scooters trying to cross the street to get to their friend's house. I don't need some dummy driving through at 45 when it should be 20, 25 if you're considerate of children.
Right, there's always a ball going in the middle of the street. Awkward laughs or smiles at inappropriate times.
Yeah, I mean, smiling and laughing is just an awkward thing that we do. Sometimes it is for humor, and sometimes it's just because you don't know how to respond. It could be something scary. It could be something sad. It's a defense mechanism. And so always when I was growing up and my mom would yell at me and I would get in trouble, I couldn't help but laugh because I was putting up a defense mechanism, and it drove her nuts. But yet eventually she would start laughing, and it defizzled the situation after. I was still in trouble, but at least it de-escalated.
Speaking of defense mechanisms, secondhand smoke.
Obviously, there are designated areas for that, and at the same time, it's a both sides thing. If somebody approaches you saying, hey, could you please step away? My children are here. I think that person who is smoking needs to also be respectful, saying, but I'm in a designated smoking area. I have nowhere else to go. And it's just be cordial with each other.
This happens to everybody. Socks that are not matched properly.
As long as you're wearing pants, I don't really see a big deal. Yeah. As long as no one else can see it.
Go to a restaurant and lobby, and you see that couch that can seat 3, and there's always 2 people hogging the entire couch.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. They're sitting like in between cushions, it seems like. When it should be able to sit more, they're taking up as much room as they can.
Excessive sweating and having to change shirts often never fun. Control in relationships when one party seems to enable it or want it all the time. Control.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be a respect, absolutely. And if you're in one of those relationships that is overly, try to talk to that person, letting you know, or seek professional help for that.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, something forced, not natural. That's what goes in it. Hair everywhere. Never want to see hair. Running errands late at night is horrible.
Yeah, because you're in a rush, and obviously your vision is impaired because of the darkness. You never know when a person will come out in front of you, a bike, or an animal like a deer.
And you're tired. Last thing, that rendering of the internet when you're trying to download something, and that circle just keeps on rendering and rendering and rendering.
Right. There was that big thing with YouTube buffering. It's kind of gone away for the most part, but yes, having lousy internet is the worst thing. Or there's too many devices. Your kids are upstairs, both on their tablets, your husband's on the computer, and then you want to watch Netflix, and your Netflix can't load.
For those of you that don't have the internet, it's like having hot water on all at the same time, taking a shower all at the same time. That's what tees me off. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene right here on 100.1 FM, 1010 AM, tunein.com, type in WPMH in the search bar. I want to thank our great guests today, Andy Hilton, Ian Locke, George McLean, and our wonderful producer, Joe Daniel. For more, log on to gjbtv.com, hit the YouTube link, at Greg Bick on Twitter, at GJB Radio as well on Twitter. Interact with me 24/7. I'm Greg Bickaveris. We'll talk to you soon.